communication issues at Target Field yesterday between the Dodgers starter and the catcher. That would be Shohei Ohtani and Dalton Rushing. Taking you to Minneapolis, that was the bottom of the first. So Rushing doesn't challenge this close pitch that's called a ball, and Ohtani almost doesn't touch his hat, and then bottom of the second, fastball gets away from Rushing. 1 run scores. You can see the frustration. They were not on the same wavelength. And remember, Shohei coming off back-to-back uncharacteristic outings, so he's trying to get back to his usual self. And then sweeper at the bottom of the zone. Ohtani challenges it. And Rushing doesn't seem happy. He was right. It was a strike. The call overturned. It was a strike. They had many conversations, a few instances where they weren't on the same page. Here's Dalton and Shohei after the game.
Yeah, I thought he did a good job. I didn't do a great job. Start to finish. It was pretty embarrassing. Thankfully, he's as good as he is.
Really a couple of ways of communicating, and one is by words, but the other way to be able to communicate is by example. And just taking the charge and showing Rush what kind of, pitching style I'm capable of.
This was nice to see. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that.
I know what you mean.
It's unfortunate that this happened, but a lot of good things came from this. One, you have Ohtani who's working with Rushing. The last few starts haven't gone well, and it coincides with Will Smith being out. I understand you're trying to find a way to gel with the new catcher, but one thing that really stood out to me was why this team is so tight-knit and why this team is so good. You see Freddie Freeman go and sit down and talk to Dalton Rushing after this. You see Dave Roberts go and put his arm around Dalton Rushing after this. You see Rushing taking accountability and going in front of the cameras and saying, you know what, I wasn't good today. I need to be better. It was unfortunate. I think he was a little too hard on himself, to be honest. You see Shohei Ohtani get in front of the cameras. You see him talk about it. This is how teams become closer. Right now, when Will Smith isn't there, Dalton Rushing is going to be your catcher. So you have to find a way to work together. This was a learning lesson. You still won the game. So it all works out for your benefit, and he gets the opportunity to make an adjustment for next time.
I like the measure of accountability by standing in front of the camera instead of hiding, back in the trainer's room. But I'm sure Dave Roberts' meeting went a little bit like this. Hey, there's a hierarchy here, and we have a cyborg unicorn monster on the mound who hits homers. Whatever he wants to throw, he's going to throw. And if he wants to challenge 49 times, like the first pitch of the game, by the way, JT Realmuto challenged the first pitch of the game yesterday, which I thought was awesome. Let him challenge it. Because you know what? If you're wrong, you look foolish. And he actually said no on one. He didn't do it. And then the second one he did, Shohei was right. So you got to go with the guy. There's just that little part of it. And I know what Rushing wants to do. He doesn't want him to use the challenge, right? You're limited on the number. But if Shohei asks for it, he's the guy on the mound. Even if it wasn't Shohei, if the pitcher wants it, I give it to the pitcher because I want him to feel like he's in command.
It's a tough situation for a catcher, right? Because this guy's going for the Cy Young. To your point, I totally agree with that. And you mentioned JT Realmuto. We were in camp with them when he re-signed. I think we underestimate the vibe between a pitcher and a catcher. Every single one of those pitchers says, I could close my eyes. I don't have to go to the pitcher's meeting. JT's got it. So there's a vibe together that takes time.
It's a vibe that plays. We just talked to Logan Gilbert, and he's talking about Kyle Riley coming back and how much that helped him because he has so much experience with him. But think about the pressure that Dalton Rushing is under. If you're going in and let's say Pedro Martinez or Nolan Ryan or Roger Clemens or Randy Johnson are on the mound and you're a rookie catcher and this guy is going for his first Cy Young and you're responsible for every single run that gets, it's so much to take on. Ohtani is expecting perfection. The entire world is watching and wanting this to happen. So it's a lot for him to take on. But I like how they handled it with all things said.
You never want to be that guy to piss off the greatest baseball player ever. And that guy is Dalton Rushing. Shohei Ohtani started on the mound on Wednesday against the Minnesota Twins. And to say the least, it was eventful between Shohei and Dalton Rushing behind the plate. Really, it all started in the second inning when there was a lot going on here. First off, there was a challenge situation. We've seen it in the past with Shohei and Dalton Rushing behind the plate. Will Smith is his usual catcher. Smith being injured, Dalton Rushing has been catching him the last few starts, and it had already been a little bit eventful, especially with challenges and some frustration Shohei had wanting to challenge pitches, and they weren't challenged. Well, in this second inning, there was a pitch that Shohei wanted challenged, and he had already been frustrated by something in the first inning, so he challenged himself, which he has said, I leave it up to the catchers, I trust the catchers. And you can see in the video, he quite frustratingly taps the top of his head to say he wants a challenge. Dalton Rushing behind the plate, frustrated, clearly disagreed with the challenge, kind of shakes his head, says no out of frustration. Well, guess what? Shohei Ohtani ended up being correct here. It was the right call to challenge. Shohei knew it was the right call to challenge, and Rushing told him not to do it, which I can't imagine doing. It's the greatest player ever. You're, I believe, 25 years old, a rookie behind the plate. Let Shohei do what Shohei's going to do. Anyway, Shohei ended up being right. So there was some frustration there already. And then there was another situation in the second inning where Shohei Ohtani threw the fastest pitch of his career on the mound, 101.7 miles an hour. But there was a cross-up. So Dalton Rushing didn't even end up catching the ball. It goes to the backstop, a run scores. And after the game, it was talked about. And Shohei just said, look, there were two different pitches called. Off speed was the first one, and I just started my motion as we were getting to the next pitch, which was a fastball. That's the one I wanted. But I think because my motion had started, Rushing thought I was going to throw a curveball. So it ends up going to the backstop, and then Rushing comes out to the mound from there. Shohei clearly frustrated the whole time here. Throws the pitch, run scores. You can see the frustration. There's another angle as well where you can really see the frustration getting to the plate, the frustration walking back to the mound. He gets there. Rushing then follows him out to the mound, and you can still see frustration. He kind of turns his back to him there. And then there's an angle of a close-up of the two communicating on the mound where it looks sort of intense, I guess you could say. Just clearly a lot of frustration here. Dalton Rushing also admitted after the game that he is embarrassed by the situation. He's embarrassed that he needs consoling, and it was just a whole thing. But what I do know this did, because 3 runs ended up scoring in the inning. 2 earned runs, 3 runs scored that inning, gets out of it with a strikeout. And then we got angry Shohei Ohtani on the mound and at the plate. Shohei comes up to hit in the top of the 3rd inning, drives in a run, RBI single up the middle, so helps his own cause there. Good swing on that ball, and it brings the Dodgers back within 1 run. And then he heads back out to the mound. So he had just given up 3 runs, 2 earned, just all of that frustration with Dalton Rushing, and they kind of talk it through and have their bumps there. Well, in the 3rd inning, it was just all, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it myself. And he struck out one guy, struck out the second guy, and then struck out the side. Just a complete dominance of an inning there. So he strikes out the side. Ends up his velocity was unbelievable the whole game, by the way. It was the first game in his career where he was averaging 100 miles an hour on his strikeout. From the 3rd inning, he was off and running from there, struck out a bunch of guys, ended up striking out 8. This strikeout to Royce Lewis, a 99-mile-an-hour sinker. It looks like a changeup. Almost looks like a left-handed slider or a cutter, and it's 99 miles an hour. Royce Lewis just did not have a chance here. So ends up striking a few more guys out after the 3rd. Pitches into the 6th. The second out of the 6th was his 8th strikeout. And then on his 89th pitch, gets a ground ball to shortstop. Mookie Betts makes a fantastic play and gets out of that. And that was the end of Shohei's outing. So 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 runs, 8 strikeouts, 2 walks, and 89 pitches is where Shohei's outing on the mound ended. Look, this Rushing thing behind the plate is becoming, we've talked about it a couple times here on This Week in Shohei Ohtani News, but Will Smith is his guy. Will Smith and him are in lockstep behind the plate as a battery. With Will Smith on the mound, Shohei's ERA is sub-1. Under 1. With Dalton Rushing behind the plate, he has a 5 ERA. And then we saw the frustration in this outing. But you know what? Dalton Rushing is a young 25-year-old rookie behind the plate. Growing pains are going to happen. They are. And luckily, he has a guy like Shohei Ohtani that's able to help him through the growing pains. And just because it doesn't always mean that growing pains are like kumbaya, right? Shohei's the greatest ever. And if you're going to catch him behind the plate, you got to rise to the occasion. And we're not often going to see Shohei demonstrative and frustrated, but it's what it took. It's what it needed. And I think Shohei handled it well. I think Dalton Rushing's comments after the game, and I think the way the Dodgers as a whole handled it was really impressive. I think it speaks to the culture of the Los Angeles Dodgers that you could see video of Rushing in the dugout, talking to Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman comes and sits down with him and has a talk with him. Dave Roberts comes and sits down with him and puts his arm around him and has a talk with him. And obviously, Dalton Rushing, you can see in this video, if you're watching, the frustration. He's like hitting himself in the head in the dugout. It was a thing. And after the game, Rushing did say, it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing as an adult to have to be handled this way and to have to be comforted. But I'm super appreciative of all of them, but it is an embarrassing situation. But I'm impressed at the way the Dodgers handled it. And I do think this could be a turning point for Dalton Rushing. Having Shohei, a guy that's not going to show a lot of frustrated emotion, show a little bit and say, hey, I need better. I need better from you. Let's be lockstep and get through this. It's a dance between a pitcher and a catcher and a lineup and figuring out how to attack opposing hitters and opposing lineups. And they got better at that after the second inning, after all the talks. And I do think, and I do hope that this game, not only for the rest of this season or just catching Shohei, but I do hope that this game is a turning point for Dalton Rushing in his career. And I do think it could be. But yeah, he was frustrated back there for sure, and they do have some growing pains, that is for sure as well. Speaking of pain, I have been so impressed with Shohei Ohtani on the mound, continuing to go out there. The last show, he talked a lot about the blister and a lot about the knee. I hand up thought he needed a game, maybe skip a game on the mound to let that blister heal. And he's said, look, if I'm going to do this, if I'm really going to be a two-way guy, I got to do it. I'm going to go all out. I'm going to push through it. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to be a two-way player and doing this. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And he's pushing through a bad blister. We're seeing him wipe like blood on his pants and work through knee inflammation. And I'm super impressed that he continues to go out there every single start. And in this start was good. After he got through the second, which there was a lot going on in that second inning, he was dominant. And what we had seen with the blister issue was as he gets deeper into games, it gets a little bit more tricky, and he's not able to finish pitches off and finish batters as well. And he looked really good as the game went on. So I've just been super impressed. And here we sit on the year with what feels like three, 4 outings in a row that haven't been great. And here we sit 8-2 on the year. He got the win on Wednesday, 8-2 with a 1.58 ERA, a 0.9 whip, 86 strikeouts in 79 2/3 innings and 13 starts. That is it's unbelievable. And I feel like we're sitting here thinking it hasn't been great lately. And here his season numbers are absolutely phenomenal. So Shohei looked good on the mound, a second inning that I think was some growing pains with him and Dalton Rushing. He did speak after the game, and every week and this week in Shohei Ohtani News, I bring you guys his comments because they're always pretty interesting after he pitches. He was asked on his second inning emotions and frustrations, and he just said the first 2 innings, actually. It was the first 2 innings. I wasn't quite convicted in a lot of the pitches I wanted to throw, so I think that's what you saw. And then they followed up and said, They asked about him and Dalton Rushing. They said, were you struggling to get on the same page early in the game? This was his most interesting answer, I thought. He said, yeah, we talk through the hitters pregame. We always do that. It's more of the in-game flexibility, just reading swings and hitters' approaches. I see where the adjustments need to happen. And in that sense, I personally realized we need to be better and be on the same page and communicate throughout the game. Then talked about the cross-up that happened in that second inning and what happened on that pass ball. He said 2 pitches were called. First was off speed. The second one was a fastball. Rushing thought he was getting off speed because I started my motion after the first pitch was called. But what I had in mind was the last pitch called, which was the fastball. So that was the outing on the mound for Shohei. A couple hits in that outing. He had the hit in the third inning, the RBI single up the middle, and then in his last at bat, he got another hit. So 2 hits in another game that he started on the mound where he gave up just 2 runs. It's another quality start. Quality start on the mound, 8 strikeouts, a win, and 2 hits at the plate. And here we are just sitting here thinking, ho hum, another okay game for Shohei. And I just always want to put it top of mind that as the starting pitcher, he struck out 8 guys, gave up just 2 runs in 6 innings. That's a quality start. He got the win, and he got 2 hits at the plate while driving in a run, and they won the game by a run. It's unbelievable is what we're watching. We're just so accustomed to seeing the greatest game ever out of Shohei, and this was a really, really good and really impressive game. At the plate, offensively, lately, he has been, the power surge has continued on, I would say. He has 6 home runs in his last 12 games. June 20th, his first game back after him and his wife, Mamiko, had another baby. His first game back, he homered. So he's got dad strength times 2 at this point. And in the first game, homers there. And then on June 22nd, a couple days later, when they got to Minnesota, homered in that game as well. So that was his second homer on the week since the last This Week in Shohei Ohtani news. And he went 5 for 18 with 2 home runs on the week, bringing his season totals in a year that I feel like people think is a down year offensively. His season totals to 295 with a 963 OPS and 17 home runs. Combine those two things, we have an 8-2 record on the mound with a 1.58 ERA, and we have a 295 average with 17 homers and a 963 OPS at the plate. How is it real? I don't know. But what we are seeing is a continuing of the greatest season of all time, if these numbers were just to continue. And I actually think the offensive numbers, the offensive surge has been for the last couple of weeks. The month of June Tani is in full effect. We're at the halfway mark of the season on the dot, and he has 17 home runs. I think we're going to end up over 40 home runs, as I predicted early in the year when he was struggling, and we are getting back onto that pace. So good week offensively, couple of home runs, a good start on the mound, and a big congratulations is due to Shohei and Mamiko welcoming their second child. They had a little boy, which I think he wasn't exactly giving away the gender at first, but in his Instagram post, you could see the bottom half, and there was a blue blanket, and then he did talk about it later on in the week, and he was asked if, basically he said he had a boy. He was asked if he wants his son to take an interest in baseball by watching him play, and Shohei said, I wonder. I don't know how long I can play for. For now, I want to do my best until this contract with the Dodgers expires.